So tell me a little bit more about like how you help women figure out this work-life balance apart from like once they get their vision. So what happens next in their journey if they're sort of working with you, or they're like, okay, then I want to be a CTO now. That means I'm not going to have as much time. That's the role I've always wanted to do. How do you sort of guide them through making time for those progressions that sometimes can be super time consuming, and there's a trade-off there. So how do you go about that?
That's a really good question, and it really depends on the woman. I think that coaching is highly individualistic. I have some clients who have recently gone through divorces and they're doing it alone, or they've always been alone. And then I have some who, are in partnerships and they either do or don't have children.
Mm,
And a lot of the time, we have to take a look at what is happening outside of life that is hindering your ability to just have peace. Because if you don't have time at work, you definitely don't have time for yourself. And the self is way more important than the job.
mm,
So a lot of the time, I like to go through auditing exercises with my clients to get an idea of, one, why do they want to be in the CTO role and what part of the CTO role do they think is going to be taxing for them?
mm,
A lot of my program and a good chunk of it is actually like identifying the right job, even when you're
mm,
going through the interview process and the negotiation process. And so
mm,
when we're able to identify this is the right job for me, and then these are my potential barriers. These are my
mm,
motivations, but these are my barriers. Then we can interview for those things. We can make sure that we're entering into an employment partnership that is going to be mutually beneficial and is not going to overly tax the person or the family.
mm,
And sometimes there are going to be roles that are going to be incredibly demanding upfront, but they're going to free up down the road, or they're going to be incredibly demanding the whole time, or the company has systems in place that make it very sustainable. And depending on what phase of your life you're in, you need to know what to look for. You need to know how to ask for it. And you also need to know how to negotiate for it. Because when we go into negotiations, we think so much about salary and benefits and vacation and bonuses and sign on bonuses and relocation and all of that. But we don't think to actually negotiate the job. And
mm,
you can negotiate the job. You can negotiate, if I accomplish this, I want it in writing that I get this additional headcount, or I'm only willing to do this if I can work, 2 days remote. And
mm,
just having that flexibility to create those support systems. But then once you know what work is going to look like and you enter into work, then it's revisiting life. And so
yeah,
depending on what your situation is, we might be having conversations about how to have a conversation with your partner
mm,
about getting the support that you need, or
mm,
how to mobilize your community and your network to provide you with the supports that you need. And I've had to go through this so much on my own. When I first had children, I looked around me. I got promoted into a leadership role. My husband took on a brand new job, decided to run the Boston Marathon, had a total midlife crisis, decided he was going to go do an MBA. And I was like, I have a new baby. And I was so stressed because my husband would give as much as he could, but he had little to give. And
mm,
I remember thinking, I have no support.
mm,
And then I had to actually create a list of all of the things that were bogging me down and
mm,
think, what actually can I delegate? Are there things I can pay to delegate? And
mm,
are there things that I can enlist? Now I actually have a wonderful community. Yesterday, my aunt picked up my children and took them to Sky Zone for me. And
mm,
so, but like, it's a resource that I wouldn't have otherwise tapped.
mm,
Um, and so we take for granted community, we take for granted resources, we take for granted negotiating the job, and then very often we take for granted negotiating with our partner.